Hello and welcome to another episode of Fast Forward, a podcast from QSR Magazine where we talk to the founders, innovators, and entrepreneurs behind some of the world's most exciting fast casual restaurant concepts. My name is Sam Oches. I am the editor of QSR and the editorial director of Food News Media. On today's episode, I am sharing my conversation with Mod Pizza co-founders Scott and Ally Svenson. Now, we've talked to a couple of folks from the fast casual pizza industry, and, this is a pretty crowded category, or at least it got pretty crowded a few years ago as a lot of folks jumped in and recognized the opportunity with it. But very few companies can lay claim to this category as Mod Pizza. This is a brand that launched in 2008 and really by all accounts seems to be really one of the first, if not the first, to really establish a fast casual pizza model. But unlike some of those other companies, Mod Pizza took growth fairly slow. It took about 5 years for it to get to even 12 units. But after that, starting in 2013, it has rocketed to more than 400 locations in 70 markets. It is now the largest fast casual pizza chain in the world. And, that's really not without a whole lot of work done by the Svensons and their team based in Seattle. But the crazy thing about the story of the Svensons is that this isn't even their first business. This is not their first business, not their second business. This is actually the third business that they have built. And they get into it, but their story is really fascinating. They started a coffee company in London called the Seattle Coffee Company back in 1995. Ended up being acquired by Starbucks, worked with them for a while, went on to work with a couple on an Italian business based out of the UK, and then landed back on their feet in their hometown of Seattle where they launched Mod in 2008. This is a really fascinating story, and I really enjoyed my conversation. I traveled out to Seattle to their headquarters in Bellevue, just outside Seattle, and really enjoyed talking to them about how they've built this company into the leading fast casual pizza brand in the world. And I think the thing that stuck with me most was from something that Ally said during this conversation. She said, this is not a pizza place, this is a people place. Just another company that's really building a foundation on the people and the culture of the business, not necessarily just on the product. So with all that said, I'm going to now roll into my conversation with Scott and Ally Svenson, the co-founders of Mod Pizza. And I started by asking the Svensons how they got into the food service business in the first place.
Need to go way, way back.
Yeah, and so I'll let Ally kick this off, but it goes back to the conversation we were having just before we went on air, which is about coffee.
That's right.
And so I'll let Ally tell you the story.
That's right. We were living in London and being from Seattle. If you've been raised around here, coffee is very much part of your existence. Yeah. And it was back in 1991. Believe it or not, there was no Seattle-style, Starbucks-style coffee anywhere in the UK. And it took us a long time to realize that. We didn't believe it at first because can you imagine a place like that?
That's right.
No.
Yeah.
I had moved over with an investment bank.
Okay.
And I convinced and cajoled Ally after a year to move over and join me. We were dating at the time.
Okay.
And she arrived, and the first thing she identified were all the things that she had come to know and love in the U.S. that the English were missing. And at the very top of that list was high-quality West Coast style coffee.
I'm curious, how long was that list in general?
There were three things that were really at the top of the list, coffee being the first. Frozen yogurt was second. We ultimately found that. And then baked goods and a Caesar salad. There was one restaurant where I made Scott take me on Valentine's Day because I wanted the one and only Caesar salad that was available in London. Believe it or not.
Caesar salad in the UK used to be lettuce and mayonnaise. And so they had, there was a lot to be improved in terms of the culinary experience we had in London when we first moved over.
And on top of the culinary limitations, customer service was non-existent too.
Okay.
The combination, again, if you're from a place like Seattle where you have Starbucks and Nordstrom, the bar is high and you get used to being treated a certain way as a consumer and being able to enjoy high quality products made to your specification. And we found ourselves walking the streets looking for something that we were just it took us a couple of years to really realize, my gosh, it's just not here.
Oh, wow.
So the morning after Ally arrived, we walked across Hyde Park, and she was taking me to my office.
Uh-huh.
And we went to get coffee, and literally it took her from the time she arrived in the UK until she realized, wow, this is a huge opportunity, was about 12 hours. And then it was about a 4-year journey of us talking about it, complaining about it, telling our friends about it.
Yeah.
That a good friend of ours finally said, this sounds like a great idea, but you either need to do something about it or
move
stop
home.
complaining about it.
Get out of
Or
here.
leave.
That started us on this
Yeah.
journey of starting what became Seattle Coffee Company.
Which actually is pretty important for the story of Mod too, because it showed us early on. And I know with when we created Mod, we had a lot of deja vu moments, that sense of, well, we're looking for something that we can't find. And that you hit that point where I think initially, and certainly for a while in London, we were young, very inexperienced. We thought there was something wrong with us. And it was it was London. They've got it all figured out. We must be crazy. And when we finally realized, no, it's not on offer. People aren't asking for it or enjoying it because it doesn't exist.
Right.
And we kept waiting for other people to bring it to life. And we heard that people would be doing that. Starbucks would be moving in and all this stuff, and it never happened. So it was pretty desperate. And ultimately, it truly was, do we stay and do this, or do we go home? And we ended up staying and building our little coffee business, which did start with one little location. It was 300 square feet. And
But it was important that we had backgrounds and were very active professionally, but neither one of us had ever done anything in coffee or in retail or in restaurants.
So it couldn't scare you away.
Exactly. We knew we didn't have enough experience to be intimidated by what it would really take to achieve it. But we had a very clear vision of what it should be. Uh-huh. And it was more from the perspective of the consumer. We could see that this was a product and an experience that they should have and they didn't. Mm-hmm. And that's what motivated us to bring it to life.
So how did you had to basically create the market and the demand for that product and experience? What was that process like?
It was really fun. And actually, we learned the importance of having a little mission statement, keeping very focused on things. We had a yellow sticky note at the time, and it simply said, our goal is to create a Seattle-style coffee bar that would fool a Seattleite. We wanted it to be exactly what we were looking for, and we ended up having to create that little mission statement because we kept hitting roadblocks that, if we weren't careful, would derail our vision and turn it into something that was more for the UK, not actually creating what we were looking for. For example, the cups and lids. Big deal here. We were used to having 3 sizes. We liked those nice dome lids. We didn't want to crush the foam.
The
we
nice
wanted to
heavy
hold
paper cup.
And they did not exist in the United Kingdom, period. They were polystyrene, the little bad cups and the really cracking, horrible lids. And we went to every supplier in the country that we could, to talk to them about and we brought back cups saying, this is what we want the cup to feel like. We need these sizes. And we were told we were crazy. We were told, do not have a 16 ounce, certainly not a 24 ounce cup of coffee. It is offensive to this market. Do not do it. And we said, well, you think it won't work because nobody's ever had it.
Right.
We ended up having to bring the cups in from the U.S. And, not too far after our initial launch, everybody was using those cups and lids, of course. But those kind of things, we just kept hitting roadblocks where we thought a Seattleite would walk into this place, and if it wasn't the right cup and the lid, it wouldn't feel like home, and it wouldn't be what we wanted to create. So that was a big part, that early on, trying to describe to people. Again, in the UK, if you say to somebody, we'd like to open a coffee bar, they laughed at us and said, well, we have too many coffee bars. And they did. They had these sandwich coffee bars that were everywhere, but you couldn't get the kind of coffee that we were looking for. So we had to get a laboratory open. Again, we'll talk about this probably when we talk about Mod, because we had to do the same thing. We had to get a space open that could be a laboratory to figure this out, which is what we did. We finally got a small location open where we just figured it out. And from using the lens of, we were the customers and consumers, that we were trying to create something that would satisfy what we were looking for, which was a great motivator.
What about that coffee shop experience? I mean, was that something that in the UK, or were they, it seems like in Europe in general, they are get in, do their espresso, get out. I mean, is that sort of similar in the UK too, or did they like that third place as Starbucks had so famously created?
Yeah, so if you're on the continent, you have the Parisian-style cafe, and you have the espresso bars in Italy. In the UK, they had them. They were more in the trendy parts of town.
Okay.
They had places where you could go and get tea. It was interesting because they drank a lot of hot beverages when we started this, but 95% of the hot beverages they drank were tea. And most of the coffee that was consumed at the time was instant and not real coffee. It was a very bizarre situation
at the time. They had no standard.
Yes. Now, so that coffee bar culture was underdeveloped in the UK. If you went to Soho, they'd have these really cool coffee bars.
A couple of Italian places that were great.
Okay.
But if you think about the high street in the UK, generally speaking, that didn't really exist.
Sure, yeah.
And so that was part of what we brought, which was this third place. Mm-hmm. Now, they had very established third places, which were called pubs.
Sure.
And that was where people truly did have this third place away from work and home.
Right.
But it was all about alcohol, and it was not very female friendly, and it was certainly not a place you would go on your way to work. Mm-hmm. Well, most people wouldn't on their way to work. And so this idea, though, of a third place was something that they readily embraced. And frankly, despite a lot of advice from people who knew better than us, that the UK and the English really didn't need this West Coast style of coffee, and that, by the way, you would never be able to sell enough cups of coffee to pay the rent, not to mention paying your staff and everything else.
Right.
As soon as we opened up, all of those biases were proven wrong, and our experience from the States kind of carried over, which is people really responded well to it. And it kind of took off from there. So it became similar to our experience with Mod. Once we validated the concept was as well received as we thought it would be. Mm-hmm. We then grew very rapidly because no one existed in the UK doing what we were doing. And we just assumed that we were motivated and inspired by Starbucks. And we figured they would be coming over any time. And if they did, they would eat our lunch because we were these young startup entrepreneurs who really didn't know what they were doing. And they were our heroes. And so,
by the way, we tried to convince them to come to the UK.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. We had no intention to do this. We just wanted to get a great cup of coffee. Yeah. And we called them. They ended up going to Japan first.
Oh, okay.
So this truly was we had to.
So eventually they did come to the UK.
Yeah.
And how long had that been that the Seattle Coffee Company had been open before Starbucks comes?
From the time we opened our first store until we had our first meeting with Starbucks was about 2.5 years.
Oh, okay. Short amount of time, actually.
And then from the time we had that first meeting until we had done a deal and sold the business to them and became part of Starbucks was another 4 or 5 months. So it all happened very rapidly.
We started, I think we opened the first one in 95 and we sold in 98.
Okay.
Yeah, and we went from one store in Covent Garden to, by the time we sold, we had just under 70 locations in the UK.
Wow.
And we had then stores trading in Southeast Asia, South Africa, and the Middle East with partners.
Wow.
And we were just about to launch into Northern Europe, and that's what Starbucks recognized was they knew the importance of first mover advantage. They'd seen it repeatedly in the States. They had this vision of building the world's most respected and enduring brand. Mm-hmm. And they knew that the two most important markets for them to be successful, and if they were going to accomplish that, were Tokyo and London. And they were in Tokyo and we were in London. And so it became for them a simple calculation of we really need to work with you or we need to come in and compete with you. And we had always been inspired and motivated by them. So when they approached us, we had some great conversations with Howard Schultz and Howard Bihar and a guy named Michael Casey, who was their CFO at the time. And we just hit it off because philosophically so much of what we were doing and what they were doing were in sync, and it came together very quickly.
And so you guys stayed in the UK for a number of years, then operating the business there. What was that process like, then being a part of the Starbucks team? I imagine you guys got a lot of good business lessons from that.
So I'll tell you, like a lot of things in life, we looked up to them for so long and just assumed that once we went inside of Starbucks, we would realize what a really well-oiled machine looked like. Because here we were, these
We'd been shooting from the hip,
scrappy entrepreneurs, kind of making stuff up as we went, and then they took us over, and we got inside of their business and realized, wow, they're just a bigger version of what the dysfunctional young scrappy entrepreneurs we were. So, listen, working with Starbucks was fabulous. Loved the brand, loved the culture, loved the people there. And as a matter of fact, a lot of those carry over to Mod because a lot of those people we got to know then are involved with Mod today.
Yeah.
But it was like anything else. Once you get inside, you realize that they have all the same challenges and issues that we had. And but the nice thing is that the culture was consistent. They really, truly were motivated to do the right thing by their people, and through them to build a great business. And so we learned a ton from our time there. But we also realized pretty quickly, we were there for 2 years, that we loved building things. And after being inside a Starbucks for a while, managing a bigger business, we realized we wanted to get back to building. And so after being at Starbucks for a couple of years, we left and then went and helped build another business called Carluccio's, which is an Italian deli cafe concept in the UK, started by Antonio and Priscilla Carluccio, two very inspiring and incredibly warm and welcoming entrepreneurs. And we partnered with them to turn this little deli concept they had into a deli cafe, and helped them design the concept and then help them roll it out. And it was an 11-year journey with them that was one of the most enjoyable professional experiences we ever had. Inspired because this concept was all about this Italian. We always say, when people say, what was Carluccio's? It was if you imagine a mashup of a Starbucks, a French cafe, and a Dean and DeLuca, but with an Italian wrapper.
And great Italian food.
And the food and the products, it truly was a deli with a retail component along with a cafe, but all serving great Italian food with amazing people. And so that was an experience we had. We built that business up. We took it public in the UK. It was a very successful public company, and then we licensed it to a group out of the Middle East. And after a couple of years, they came back and said, we love this concept. We want to grow it, but we want to own it. And so they took it private, and we then stepped away. But it was, like I said, an 11-year fabulous experience.
It was neat, too, because the Carluccio's, they were the face and the inspiration for that brand and that business, but very much a reminder to us. And I think one of the reasons why we connected with them so immediately and so deeply was they were so authentic. What they were trying to do was so authentically true to them, the products, the reason they were doing it. And that was kind of all we knew, because our Seattle Coffee Company journey had been exactly the same. It was a very authentic, organically developed concept and reason of being. And they were the same way. And I think it led us to, I would describe Mod the exact same way too. There's definitely a thread that connects the thinking.
So let's follow that thread. Good segue, because then you guys return to the States after this experience. Is that when that happens? You guys decide to move back? So
we actually helped them launch Carluccio's, helped them build the business in the first few innings, and then we actually moved back to the States. So of our 11-year relationship with Carluccio's, about half of it we were back in the States.
Okay. So where does the idea from Mod then spring up? What is the genesis of how that idea came to be, and then getting into that?
So
launch?
It's interesting, when we moved back to the States and having had these two magical experiences in multi-unit retail restaurants, we kind of said to each other, let's not do that again.
Let's certainly not do that again.
And the reason is because we had done it twice. They had both been incredibly fun, memorable, successful experiences. And we just figured that if we tried it a third time, given that retail restaurants is a fickle industry, we would probably screw it up. And we didn't want to taint those great memories.
Well, and also we'd never, with both of those examples, we had not been looking for something to do. It was always something that hit us in the face.
It kind of pulled us in. And so for years, came back to Seattle and did a bunch of things entrepreneurially. And we had a lot of approaches to do more in retail and restaurants, and always said no. And over the years, various different ideas came to us. We almost did something else in the Italian restaurant space because it was a passion. And then a group of people came to us and said, have you ever looked at the pizza industry? And that spurred a process of exploring it over a 18-month period. And so we were very reticent, but we were intrigued because, again, we've always had a love affair with virtually all things Italian. We spent a lot of time in Italy, and we just love Italian food and culture and spending time there. And so we started to kind of look at it, and one of the things we realized was second largest restaurant category in the United States behind hamburgers, highly fragmented, and a shocking lack of innovation for the last generation.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've had the rise of the fast casual service model that has really brought different food categories to consumers in a new, accessible, more relevant way for today's lifestyles. And what hit us was the very simple insight, and it wasn't very profound, but sometimes, like coffee in the UK, it's the simple insights that matter. What happens if we brought the fast casual service format to pizza? No one had done it before. And, raising 4 boys, thinking about our life and what we would like, which again has been kind of the filter that we've used with our other businesses, we both looked at each other and said, this is something that if it existed, we would use and use regularly. And so we started this exploration of what would it look like to bring the fast casual model to pizza. And we brought some great people together, many of whom we'd worked with at Starbucks, who have had a profound impact on the business, and decided after talking about it for some time to open one location and use it as a laboratory.
We need a laboratory, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And let's see if we could pull this together.
Yeah.
And we literally did it as a fun project and took a piece of real estate in downtown Seattle. Like I said, brought this group of people together and kind of poured ourselves into it. It took us about 18 months of planning before we opened it. And then for a year after we opened it, it was the laboratory where we refined and tested, and because we couldn't go someplace else and say, well, here's how someone else has brought pizza to fast casual.
Yeah.
Let's look what they've done and let's try to modify. We had to start from scratch. So it was literally on a whiteboard. We had to kind of draw it up. How would we lay out the restaurant? How would we manage the operational flow and the ergonomics, and how would we develop the product, the speed of service, the whole thing, the pricing model, this simple idea that has become pretty prevalent now of offering any combination of toppings for one price. Mm-hmm. If you look across our fast casual pizza market, everybody's embraced that, but at the time it didn't exist. And it goes back to a simple story. When we were designing this concept and the experience we wanted to deliver, we had this great conversation, and Ally reflected back on this time when we were living in the UK, and we went to this really cool country house hotel. And it's one of those places that you go away for a long weekend and you spend more than you should on, per night.
Sure. Yeah.
But we walked into our room, and there was a little sign over the mini bar. It kind of had, the mini bar with everything laid out on a table, snacks and drinks and so forth. And the little sign said, "We are so happy you're here. Please accept any of this on the house."
Wow.
And Ally couldn't get over it. She thought this was awesome.
The
and
way
she
that
talked
felt.
about it for...
You don't get that in the U.S.
Yeah, and she talked about it for the first 20 minutes. It was just, this is amazing. I love this place. And I kept reminding her, given how much we're paying for the room, they could throw in the M&Ms and the chips.
Right.
But most people don't. Mm-hmm. And the fact that there was that simple act of gratitude, of generosity, of simple, honest, was so impactful that when we were designing Mod, we decided to introduce that concept to the business, which was, hey, come in, satisfaction guaranteed, whatever you want, any combination of toppings, we're going to charge you one price. And by the way, if you come in and are really creative and adventurous and you end up making something you don't like, just let us know. We'll make you another one, no questions asked. So this simple idea of let's go above and beyond to make sure customers have a great experience.
Well, and it's worth mentioning the timing of when we were launching the first Mod was in the fall of 2008. So November 2008.
It was about
what
8
was
weeks
going on.
after Lehman Brothers failed.
Whoa.
So this combination of one, so I think very much motivated by, we wanted to deliver that experience so people felt the way we felt at this hotel, because it's a wonderful feeling that, oh my gosh, they're happy I'm here and there are no strings attached. They really care. Combined with what do we need what does this concept need to be given what's going on in our economy right now? Mm-hmm. And for us, it was about value, that people are going to be hesitant to go out, and this needs to be something that they're comfortable and they feel, oh my gosh, this is okay. I'm not being nickel and dimed. They've got my back. The pricing, the value, and then job employment was the other opportunity we knew we should be thinking about. Could this business do something to address that insecurity in the country right now, given that the financial markets are melting?
Right. Was there, in that development process of the brand, you didn't have any other fast casual pizza brands to study, but you did have other fast casuals.
Sure.
Were there other brands that you were sort of learning from and being inspired by, or were you pulling?
Of course, yeah. I mean, and you can go back and unpack a lot. I mean, we had spent time at Starbucks, and so Starbucks is not often referred to as a fast casual brand, but in a lot of ways, that's what they are. You come in and you get a product individualized and customized to your desire, and the way in which they manage the service. So Starbucks was a big inspiration for us. Chipotle was obviously an inspiration in terms of being kind of at the vanguard of creating this category. And a lot of other businesses and brands that we've experienced over time, some of which are in retail and food and some of which aren't, that kind of give you the inspiration to say, gosh, if I'm going to build a business or a brand, I'd love it to have these elements or attributes or this attitude and or the character of the brand. And so we have spent a lot of time looking around and being inspired, and you put it all into a pot and you stir it up, and out comes Mod.
In hindsight, it's interesting because you can see now there's no surprise that fast casual is what it is. And we can never imagine a world going back to the way things were, right? Yeah. Because it makes so much sense. But hindsight, I think of us driving around town with our 4 hungry boys, throw a few of their hungry friends in the back of the big car, in between a game or a practice. How do you feed that family? How do you take care of everybody in the car in a way that makes sense? It's not going to break the bank, that is acceptable and exciting for everybody involved. There were very few options in 2006, 2007. We did, I think I mentioned earlier, we had some of those deja vu moments where we thought we're looking for something that we can't find.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're crazy. I'm pretty sure there are other people that might be looking for a similar offering. And it's amazing to me that it wasn't that long ago that fast casual was not a thing.
Right.
And now it's everything.
Yeah, for sure.
It wasn't just fast casual and Chipotle and Starbucks that were inspiring. I'll tell you, one of the brands that we've talked about a lot as an inspiration was In-N-Out Burger.
Interesting.
Simple. They kept it simple.
Yeah.
And in a world where it's so easy to complicate things, to add new alternatives or options or sizes or flavors, where they've just said, we're going to do something simple, but we're going to try to get better and better and better at it. And by the way, they deliver incredible value.
Yeah.
And so
that was inspiring to us.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
That's we have a line that was on one of our, at the very beginning, we had on our box, simple food for complex times. We wanted people to understand, there are thousands of combinations on offer and all this stuff, but truly it's simple. And you can get what you want, how you want it, quickly. And there are no strings attached, and we're not going to, we didn't want it to feel complicated, and we knew that people didn't want it to be complicated.
Right.
So
part of the ethos of the brand is kind of taking you back to a simpler time when things were not quite so complicated. This idea of a little bit of nostalgia. Where can you walk in today's world and say, I get anything I want. It's all one price. If you walked into Mod it was 1952, well, maybe it would have been like that, but today it's not. It's a little bit more complicated, but it doesn't need to be.
We always say, and we're of the age where we can say that if we were watching Happy Days and if there'd been a pizza place on that set in that show, Fonzie would have definitely gone to Mod.
Yeah.
So
most kids won't know who Fonzie is.
But we do.
It remains in the pop culture, the zeitgeist. What was the response to that first store? So you opened downtown Seattle. That tells me that you guys were banking on work day, lunch crowds?
So I'll tell you, we actually wrote this down at the time because it was a distinct enough part of our launching. We knew that the location we chose for our first store was not a prototypical location for us, but it was a perfect laboratory. And what we meant by that is that in our business, we really want to be in a location where you can have 14-day parts a week, lunch and dinner 7 days a week. our business is pretty evenly balanced between lunch and dinner, which is a little bit unique today for a pizza concept. But we decided to open our first store in a very downtown business district location where when we first launched, it was really 5 day parts a week, lunch, Monday to Friday. Mm-hmm. But they were very, very busy lunches. And it forced us to figure out the speed of service, the flow, the throughput, how you manage the production. And it also allowed us to validate a bunch of other questions we had. We had a long list of questions around, would people eat pizza at lunch? Would women eat pizza at lunch? Could we make it fast enough? Was the quality that we could do in a test kitchen replicable in a restaurant at capacity? There was a long list of things we wanted to figure out.
Yeah.
And that put us into an environment where it kind of pressure tested it. And the response from day one was really positive. Now, we look back on those days in 2008 and think, man, we've come a long ways since then. But the customer response was very, very positive, which was what encouraged us to kind of continue on this journey. But what's interesting is a lot of people don't realize this. We've been the fastest growing restaurant chain in the U.S. for the last 3 years.
Right.
But in our first 5 years, on our 5th birthday, we had 12 stores in Western Washington. And so we intentionally, during those early days, went slow so that eventually we could go fast. And we were really thinking carefully about the concept and the operations. We were thinking carefully about our culture and why we were doing it. Mm-hmm. And then as we got through our 5th birthday and we shifted gears, on our 10th birthday, which was just last November, we started the business the week of Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving of 2018, we turned 10, and that week we opened our 400th store.
Wow.
So we went from 12 to 400 in 5 years.
Incredible.
And we went from one market to being in over 70 markets. So, it was the 2 chapters of Mod were very distinct, but they were very intentional. Mm-hmm. That first chapter was all about building the foundations upon which, if we convinced ourselves that this was a concept that could scale and that it had the attributes where it deserved to scale, we had the experience and we'd had the people around us where we knew what to do next, but we needed to validate first that this was something that had staying power and it was relevant and it deserved to be grown.
Sure.
And it was because of the time we took, I think, in that initial phase that allowed us to successfully manage this last phase.
Well, and it forced us to ask the more important and most important question of whether or not we wanted to scale it.
Mm-hmm. And if you really want to understand Mod and why we're here and why we're doing this, the most important question that we asked was, well, why are we doing this? Ally and I had a comfortable life at the time. We had 4 boys. We'd built several successful businesses. We didn't need to do this. And if we were going to do it and put ourselves back into the position of really building a startup and investing all the energy that you need to do that successfully, which is hard, we needed to be motivated by the right reasons. And Ally said it at the time when we were considering this pivot, the last thing the world needs is another soulless restaurant chain. Mm-hmm. And if we were going to be involved with it, if we were going to pour our life into it, it had to matter. And for us, mattering meant that it became about so much more than just pizza. If you walk into a Mod today, you'll quite often see something written on a wall or tucked behind a corner that says, "This is not a pizza place." And it's just a reminder to us and our teams about why we're here, which was we made a decision early on to use this platform. We saw that people love the pizza, they love the concept, the value, the customization, the whole experience. Man, they were really embracing it. And we said, wow, what happens if we were to take this concept now and expand it across the United States and maybe beyond? What could we do with that? And that's when the magic really happened. And that's when we came to life and found the motivation to say, let's undertake this really aggressive growth. Mm-hmm. And it was all about using the business as a platform to make a positive social impact focused on our people.
Sure.
And specifically focused on what we call impact hiring, giving people opportunities who otherwise would face barriers to employment. And that, when we discovered that reason for being, that mission, it's like all the pieces came together. And it a lot of people say, well, how can you manage the rate of growth? Because most of our growth has been company-owned. And yes, we do have some fabulous franchise partners, but we're about 75% company-owned today. And a lot of people say, well, given how fast you've grown, how can you do that and manage it and maintain the culture? And I think because we've done it and we built a culture around our people and around making a difference in their lives, that has energized and motivated people to do the hard work to be able to grow the business the way we have.
Sure.
So,
was that inspired by the recession? Ally, you kind of mentioned this about the employment part of it, having that strong foundation. Did that come out of the recessionary times, or were there other things, guys, from your past that you kind of learned that from?
Again, I think in hindsight, that was the start of a certain mindset of we're doing this differently. Mm-hmm. We're going to build something differently. Does it asking the hard and essential questions? What does this thing need to be right now? And in the fall of 2008, this thing needed to be great value for money. It needed to be a welcoming, friendly, affordable place. And we need to be giving people secure, reliable jobs at a time when people are job insecure and financially insecure. Right. That was the start of a certain thinking. And I think very quickly, by location number 2, that approach had resulted in the employment of, the hiring of some kind of classic impact hires, some people with serious...
people you might consider second chancers.
Yeah, barriers to employment, previously incarcerated, things like that. And by location number 2, we were watching this unbelievable culture develop already, where the people that were the most at-risk hires were the fiercest protectors of the business. They were so grateful for their opportunity. They were pouring themselves into the customer service that they provided to somebody walking in the doors, the way they treated a fellow mod squatter, their desire to want to pay it forward or give back simply because they had been given a chance.
Yeah.
That we noticed very early on because it was remarkable. And when we sat down and started to have these bigger conversations around, okay, we know we have a viable concept here. We have a brand that could build, we could scale, all of these things. What will make it worth it to us? And Scott talks about the realization that this could be such an incredible platform from which we could do something. Mm-hmm. If we could do more of that, if we could see what we had seen by location number 2, that was something we thought, well, that the world does need that. So let's go with it. And you think about it today, we always try to simplify it when people are trying to understand that truly great pizza and salads it's a front for this greater purpose. That's how we view it. We're using our business as a platform to make as many positive social impacts as we can. And from this platform, we really do 2 things. We feed people and we employ people. And when you dig down and you start to really understand mod, you realize when needed, we do everything we can from that for those 2 in those 2 areas.
Sure.
Feeding, we meal packing for at-risk, hungry kids on weekends is something that we are very, very focused on. We've packed probably close to 1 million meals at this point around the country with a partner where we're able to do that for backpack programs, that sort of thing. And the employment piece is a very, very big focus for us. Every time we open a location, we're hiring up to 30 people. And through partnership, we're able to provide some really great opportunities for people that have barriers to employment. And that's something that we are continuing to invest in, and it's something that our entire organization is embracing. And it's coming to life in different ways and in different markets. But,
sure.
But that is very encouraging.
This is where kind of mod was very serendipitous for us. And where I think the various strands and themes of your life all come together. Ally and I have always had an aspiration and a motivation to do something with our lives, to give back, to leave it better than we found it. And we've had long conversations about what that means and where our society is and what's needed. And we never aspired to build a big pizza chain. Never was on our radar screen.
Yeah.
It became the vehicle through which we felt we could make the biggest, most sustainable impact on our communities and on our society. And the fundamental piece is this idea that companies and capitalism can be an incredibly positive force for good and force of positive change. And the challenge we took on, frankly, was not, can we turn a fast casual pizza concept can we build the market-leading fast casual pizza concept? That became a means to an end. And the end for us was to prove that you could build a business that could be best in class. It could be kick-ass. It could make its shareholders a lot of money. But it did so in pursuit of making a positive social impact. And you marry those two things together. And if we could do that and role model that and hopefully inspire other entrepreneurs to do that and create the ripple effect of inspiring others, you could really make a big difference in the world.
Absolutely.
Through that became the motivation.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that our expression is through pizza, which we love. I mean, we love the product, we love the experience we deliver, and that's the fundamental platform. But it was never really about that. And
it's an important thing to point out too, that nothing about mod has been some big preconceived plan. Very much it has been a reflection back of the inspiration or observation that we've had of great things happening. And it's actually something that we've really been able to enjoy exploring and acting on as we raise 4 boys. 2 of them have launched now, 2 are still living at home. All of them are obviously very focused on mod because they've been raised on it.
Yeah.
All but one started in the dish room. He's not quite of age yet, but they've worked their way up that way. And they've been able to help us understand the potential of mod to impact, change a life, and then the ripple effect of what that does. And it's been, they have helped us understand why this is work worth doing. And for us, our other big obsession has been making sure that we're the best parents we can be to these 4 amazing humans. And in wanting to be of service to them, we know that the best thing we can provide them is inspiration and understanding of how they should live life, which is make it worth something.
Right.
And mod is doing that for them. But it's funny, we have this flywheel image in our head when we think of mod, and it's this spinning thing. We always talk about the journey for anybody at mod, including us, is about getting to gratitude. And when you get to gratitude, it's really powerful and can be very inspiring to others. But it was something that was shown to us. It wasn't an idea that we had. It was, we were dazzled really by some of the people that had been impacted by mod, did something so incredible with it, showed us that, oh my gosh, this is possible. And at a time when I think we would all agree we're living in crazy times. I mean, our world, things can be quite scary and negative. There's so much to be hopeful about. And we've seen again and again and again through mod that humanity generally is pretty amazing and quite wonderful. And the way people want to take care of each other when they have been taken care of. The fact that a little pizza brand has been able to help us better understand that, and that's the inside scoop on mod.
Yeah, you can tell the story of a company through the story of the people who've traveled the journey with the company. And I'll tell you, the thing that keeps motivating us and inspiring us to work harder and to see how far we can take this are the stories of the people who we work with. And it's, like Ally said, it's been both humbling and inspiring and amazing to see the difference that a business like this has been able to make in so many people's lives. And it's what really happens is you bring good people in and they bring other good people in, and the way you see them take care of each other and the impact that they're making. We've created a platform and now they're doing the hard work. It's been amazing.
Yeah. So you've scaled now to over 400 locations. Yep. You've also created a market. I mean, when you talk about fast casual pizza, you guys beat it by 3 years, 2 or 3 years, give or take.
3 or 4 years.
2010, 2011, when it starts to emerge across the country.
Yeah.
So it's funny because you guys had to create a market in the UK for your coffee company. Then you had to create this market here in the States for fast casual pizza. Did you find that those processes were similar, or what was that process like of carving out the market here for fast casual pizza?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think it was similar. And in many ways, it's pretty simple, right? You've got to start with the fundamentals of making sure you're designing a concept and an experience that truly delivers value. And values can be defined in multiple dimensions. But are you delivering sufficient value that people want to talk about you and that word starts to spread? And so much of our, it's interesting, we're kind of entering this phase of our growth where we're starting to mature and we're starting to grow up and we're starting to add different dimensions. But one of the things that we've not done a lot of in the past is any traditional focused marketing. What we've done, and this actually is the same path that we took with our coffee business. Frankly, it's the same path that Starbucks took your focus is get great real estate, drop a great concept into that real estate, hire great people and take care of them, and then deliver a great experience to your customers. And those customers will tell other people about it. And through word of mouth, you'll build a great business. And I think in so many ways, those are the fundamental building blocks of a business like ours.
Yeah.
Now, over time, you can add other dimensions, right? So you can start to tell your story in a bigger way through marketing or through an app or loyalty, or you can go on and on and on. But if you don't have those foundational things in place, and it's not the type of thing that will spread through word of mouth, I think you really have to question whether or not you have something. And that's the way this thing built. And one of the things that if you're an entrepreneur looking at this sector, the guys from Starbucks, good friends who built the business, have said to us many times that they don't know if they would be able to replicate the success they had today because things move so much more quickly. Back then, they had years to kind of develop the concept and go from one market to two. And then, yes, and competition did emerge, but it was more local, and with social media and the speed at which information travels and just the entrepreneurial focus and energy on these sectors. We were up here in Seattle on our own for a number of years, and then these other concepts started to pop up, and then a torrent of lookalike concepts started to emerge. And there was a period of time when, frankly, it was probably the least enjoyable stage of our journey, where we were so excited about pioneering this new category. And all of a sudden, everybody was doing it, at which point we kind of lost interest.
Oh,
because it was like, well, if it's no longer new and novel. Now, what we realized was that many of the people who entered were attracted by the business opportunity. They maybe didn't have the experience, or they weren't prepared to invest in building the foundations. And many of those competitors have either gone away or slowed down or retrenched. And so we anticipated that would happen. It took a little while, and I think the market is more sane and rational now. And I think the market will play out, and there'll be a couple of brands that will build a national following, and then a number of brands that will build local or regional. And that's pretty much the way most of these categories have played out over time. So, it's been an interesting process to kind of watch the ebbs and flows of excitement and enthusiasm and at one stage probably hype or overhype that comes to a category like this.
I think a great reminder all the way along, going even back to our coffee days a long time ago, the importance of authenticity, I think, cannot be understated. Because I think if things are being created and done from an authentic place, there's just more of a conviction and it's something that's meant to be. It's something that is existing or growing for the right reason. That's motivated by, truth and desire to actually fill a need or do so. I think it's very, very important. At least it has been for us.
It's interesting because we've made really no proactive effort to tell our social mission story beyond our employees.
Yeah.
And most of our customers don't know about it, which is fine. But what's interesting is that we consistently get feedback from customers via social media, and then in a few other instances where we've had experts, if you will, go into our stores and really study them. They've come back, and the consistent message is there's something different happening at Mod. And I think it's a byproduct of how we built the business around our employees, how we take care of our employees, and ultimately how our employees feel. And as a result, the way they show up and the way they make our customers feel. And yes, it's a little bit below the surface, but it is deep and it's foundational. And those are the things that are hard to fake. But if you get it right, and by the way, we're dealing with humans, so it's not going to be right every day, every hour. Yeah. But fundamentally, if you get it right, then when you show up, the key is when you walk out of a Mod, how did that experience make you feel? And so much of that experience is going to be a byproduct of how our team feels.
Sure.
And we have seen, and comes through the social media reviews where we're kind of top of category in terms of all of the social media metrics, ranked the most loved pizza brand in the country recently. So a lot of that comes back to customers realizing, wow, there's something different going on here. Love the product, love the value, love the speed, but I really love the way it makes me feel. And that is largely because our team feels it. And we call it mod love. And this idea that if you really love your employees and treat them accordingly, that they'll take care of your guests and the business will take care of itself.
And it informs everything that we do. We're studying this a lot now as we grow. Mod exists to serve people, and this whole idea of servant leadership, which, by the way, was Howard Behar, who was as our mentor because he was president of International for Starbucks when they acquired Seattle Coffee Company. He became a mentor to us and a great friend, and he still is. Servant leadership is something that we pay a lot of attention to, and Scott and I are well aware of the fact that we exist to be of service to the people of Mod. So if we're focused heavily on delivering that type of service to the Mod Squad, and then, like I said, we see that it bleeds out into how they feel and how they take care of others. So.
Yep.
I was going to ask about sort of the point of differentiation you guys are trying to carve out now in this very crowded category. It seems like this culture that you have developed, I was going to ask because, it seems like a lot of folks will point to those really consumer-facing things like, this menu or this marketing campaign, branding, whatever it is. But Scott, you bring up like what you do is not necessarily consumer-facing, but consumers still feel it. I mean, do you see that this is the culture that you're building? Do you think that that's your key differentiator in the category?
So it's a great insight, and thank you for bringing that up. I think you put your finger on it. When we talk about how do you build sustainable competitive advantage in an industry that is largely commoditized with very low barriers to entry, and our approach to that has always been the same, which is we are attempting to do it through culture and purpose. Because we think those are the things that are at the heart of engaging and motivating our people. And it's the way we engage and motivate our people which will have the biggest impact on the way our employees treat our customers. And yes, it's foundational. We have to have fabulous pizza and salad and other products. They have to be delivered consistently at a great value, just the way you want it. And by the way, if it turns out any way but just the way you want it, get it again, no questions asked, no price, no additional charge. So there are so many elements that go into delivering that great experience. But ultimately, if that experience is being delivered by people who are disengaged and not passionate and really not caring about you or the experience they're delivering, you're going to feel it. And we think that it is critical that if we're going to do this at scale, and we're going to do it in a way that's differentiated, we've got to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's relevant and important to our team. And the business is being built about and around and for them, and therefore they care. Ally said it earlier. The most powerful way we know of to build a business like this and to do it consistently and at scale is to make the business more important to our team than it is to us. And at that point, you've built a culture that will defend itself, and that's what we're working on. And like Ally said, it's authentic. I mean, the most gratification we get out of this business and out of life today is not, okay, we opened another store and it did a certain amount of sales, or it did a certain amount of profit. To us, that's a means to an end. It's what are the stories that are coming out of the people's lives that have changed. And, you think about why are we traveling in this journey? What are we all hoping to get out of life? And it's, people become, I think, seduced or numb to this idea that, well, it's about being successful and your power, position, prestige, money. Well, there's no correlation between those things. Beyond a certain modest amount of money, there's no correlation between those things and happiness.
Right.
It's been proven time and time again. So what are the things that are correlated with happiness? It's community. It's
sense
relationship.
Of purpose.
It's sense of purpose. It's those things do drive gratification and contentment and happiness.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you're really honest with yourselves around, are you investing your life in a way that's going to lead to those things? Because if you really want to be happy, why not focus on those things? And that's what we were fortunate enough to do when we started this journey of Mod. We asked ourselves the question, when have we been the happiest? When have we been the most inspired and gratified? let's do more of that. And it really came down to those moments when we were making an impact in other people's lives. Listen, I think when you're a business person, it's like being an athlete. You want to be really good at your game and you want to win. The question is, how do you define winning? And for us, this is the way we've defined success. And we know that we need to build a best-in-class business that wins in the market. Otherwise, the mission that we've built is unsustainable. And it means so much to us because we have seen and interacted with the people who it's impacting. And so it becomes very personal. And so this is really important stuff. But with all due respect to the pizza, it's not about the pizza. It's about what we can use pizza to accomplish. And it's about the people that are being impacted as a result. And as a result of that, we're going to deliver the best damn pizza in the marketplace because it's so important.
Yeah.
But this is not a pizza place. This is a people place. And we're very clear on that with anybody that wants to get involved with Mod.
Yeah. You guys, Scott, you mentioned earlier about how quickly things are moving now, and even compared to, back in the 90s. When you think about when Mod opened, even, things are so different today in fast casual and the food service world. You talk about things like digital ordering, off-premises, these kinds of things. How has the Mod brand evolved over these last 11 years, and how are these changes now like setting it up for the future?
Yeah, so it's a great question. You're completely right. The things we're doing today and the rate at which we're having to innovate compared to where it was 10, 11 years ago is very different. And we are embracing the experience that our customers are asking us to deliver. And, we've rolled out an app and loyalty last year. It's been incredibly well received. We're starting to lean into testing the way in which we show up off-premise, delivery. We have drive-thrus that we've built, been really fabulously executed and received. So we want to make sure that as people come into Mod and really learn to love Mod, that we want to then make Mod as accessible to them as possible. But that will never get in the way of where we think Mod shows up and is most important in every community that we serve, which is as a place for people to gather and to have that human connection and interaction. Now, that's not to say that they don't come in and love that experience at Mod and then they're home watching the game on Sunday and they want the pizza delivered. Okay, well, we got to be thinking about that, and we need to fill that need state for them. But that's not going to become the business. It's just a way of expressing the business, and the business will always be at its heart a place where people gather and interact, where we employ people. There's going to be AI and robotics and automation and so forth. And listen, we will embrace those things over time, but never at the expense of taking care of our people. If we can embrace those things to do a better job of taking care of our people, then we're all over it.
Yeah.
And part of taking care of our people is this celebration of the human condition. At the end of the day, if you take the current trends to their natural extreme, we'll end up in a place where no one's very happy. There's always going to be a balance. You can snap your fingers and have a drone drop a pizza on your lap. That's great, but you still want to get out and interact and connect with people and have those experiences. And that's a thing that we're going to stay focused on and make sure that we're there to deliver them in the communities in which we serve.
Yeah. So before I let you guys go, you guys have had some incredible experiences in your careers, living in the UK, starting a couple companies, building what is now the fastest growing restaurant company in the world. What would you recommend? What is your advice to younger entrepreneurs who were in your shoes, say, 20, 25 years ago, before all of this? What would your advice be to today's entrepreneurs who want to get in this business?
That's a great question.
I'll start only because I know we'll end up saying very similar things because we think about this and talk about it a fair amount. I think lucky for the world, there's a big focus on being purposeful with whatever you're doing. And my advice continues to be to ourselves and to the people that we love and to anybody that asks, make sure that what you're doing has a purpose that is so deeply motivating to you that even when it gets really hard, which it will, it doesn't matter because it's something that you believe in and it needs to be done. I think being connected to a sense of purpose is the most powerful thing we have to draw from. And of course, the people that you surround yourself with while you are doing whatever it is you're doing ultimately make it worthwhile or not. So I think the combination of purpose and people, for me anyway, is what I would focus on.
That's good.
Couldn't say it any better. That's exactly. I mean, the only thing I would say is make sure you have a really strong why behind what you're doing, because there'll be days when what you're doing becomes really hard, and you've got to have a motivation and a reason to strap it on and get through it and grind it through.
Yeah.
And if it's just about money, that's a pretty shallow motivation, and it's easy to give up when it's just about that.
Yeah.
And then, like Ally said, make sure that you're surrounding yourself with great people. And the best advice I could find is make sure you've got a partner in it that inspires you and that is better than you, like Ally is.
There you go.
And then you'll be fine.
Awesome. Well, Scott, Ally, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, that's my conversation with Scott and Ally Svenson, the co-founders of Mod Pizza. As always, please share your feedback on this podcast. You can share it directly on the service where you listen to the podcast. You can subscribe on those services as well. Email me at sam@qsrmagazine.com. Also, go visit qsrmagazine.com/podcast to get all of the episodes that we've been sharing with fast casual founders and executives. And also stay on qsrmagazine.com and access all of the insights and news that you need from the quick service and fast casual restaurant industries. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.